This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to episode 42 of Cooking with Grief. That's right, episode 42, The Meaning of Life. And this episode is brought to you from quarantine. So, you've been fortunate enough recently to hear me and Chris in the same room. But, this time we've gone back to the old ways. We've gone retro, and we are socially distancing, emotionally apart, and doing it on the phone. So, as mentioned, here is my co-host Chris.
Hello, it is me coming from Cooking with Grief, HQ Underground Bunker number 2.
Indeed. And
you laughed at me when I insisted on getting 2 separate underground bunkers, but who's laughing now?
Exactly. Yeah, you were right to decentralise this podcast.
Splinter cells.
Podcast guerrilla warfare was always an aim. But yeah, so how are you dealing with this whole, malarkey? It's isolation and
the global malarkey.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Everything said, not too bad. Everyone I know is safe and sane and healthy. Fuck it, let's take that as a win.
Indeed, we should. So, now, let's distract our listeners from the doom and gloom in the world. For people who've chosen the apocalypse to tune in for the first time, the way the podcast works is each of us have brought 2 surprising, hopefully funny facts that you won't have heard about. We share them and give you the gift of knowledge and ourselves the gift of self-importance. And on that note, over to you, Chris, for your first topic.
So for my first topic, I'm going to touch on something we've spoken briefly about before in previous episodes. Chris, if we've learned anything through the course of doing this podcast, what's the one thing we've learned about rabbits?
That they did not kill Napoleon.
Exactly. It's a weird thing to learn, or to have to learn, or to unlearn.
It's not wrong.
Yep, but
unless you're about to shatter my mind now.
Well, groundbreaking. No, I wish I could break that live on the podcast that he did in fact get killed by rabbits. But no, instead I'm going to tell you a second fact about rabbits to complete the set, or Warren, wherever. Thank you very much. Don't pity me. There's a superstition that you shouldn't let rabbits on ships, like in cargo. I mean, if they pay for the ticket, then sure, I think they're entitled to be there as much as anyone else.
It sounds like good planning not to let rabbits on ships, just because. Oh no. I was going to say they'd eat through the wood, but that's beavers. Carry on.
Well, I'll carry on.
Don't let beavers on ships.
Well, it turns out you're right to confuse them in that sense, because in the 17th century, when obviously ships were predominantly made out of wood, and rabbits were carried as cargo, they had a habit of chewing through like wooden crates and running rampant and everything like that. And there are several cases of ships sinking because rabbits got loose and did enough structural damage to sink the ship. And they're responsible for hundreds of deaths.
So really, rabbits have probably killed more sailors than sharks?
Yes. Like sharks, than sharks have killed people, not... They've killed more people than sharks.
Yeah, well, both.
Because that's impressive. If they get out of their like wooden hutch on a boat in the middle of the ocean, gnaw the way out of the boat, and then manage to nibble away an apex predator in their home turf.
Then
fair play to it.
Underestimated that.
And ever since then, that sort of, you know how like sailors love their superstitions, so they're like, and anything can be a bad omen once, and then suddenly it spreads like wildfire. And that carried basically up until modern day, that rabbits are a bad omen, because like sailors get very specific tattoos.
Yeah,
and it's meant you can't have like bad omen tattoos, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And rabbits is one of the forbidden tattoos.
There you go. I mean, I don't know what the market for rabbit tattoos is like outside of like Playboy aficionados.
Interesting reference.
Well, I can't think of anyone else who'd have a rabbit tattoo, to be
Fans of
honest.
popular battery brands.
That too. Weirdly, both Energizer and Duracell use rabbits, and
Yeah.
you were saying about sailors and their superstitions, and like one of them is not to kill like seabirds, isn't it? Like the albatross and all that. I don't know if it's true, if this is the real reason, but I watched that Lighthouse film, the weird one, black and white, with Willem Dafoe and
a lot of graphic masturbation
Robert Pattinson.
scenes.
Yes.
Yep.
And it says the reason why you're not supposed to kill seabirds is because they've got the souls of dead sailors in them.
All right.
And that's why it's bad luck.
Ah.
I don't know if that was made up for the film, but it seems very plausible as like the
origins.
as the reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you would have thought a sailor might want to reincarnate something as see a different part of the world. Maybe a tortoise. Something land-based.
Won't get used for burglaries.
Yeah.
Life of crime awaits.
Yeah. The superstition about rabbits, though, continued even into the modern day, because as recently as 2013, a family was denied passage from England to France on a ferry, like a big metal ferry, because they had a rabbit with them.
Can't be too careful. Would have been safer if they brought a shark.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Or they could have just... Sure, yeah, fine. Anything goes these days.
Yes, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, we've pointed out, fair enough. I mean, if they'd just flown instead and called the rabbit a emotional support animal, you can get away with anything these days, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
And as my sort of secondary part to this, I've got a game of to fly or not to fly, and I'll give you a list of animals. You tell me if they've been, if you think they've been allowed as a emotional support animal on a plane.
Oh, why is this like place to not or not a place again?
Yeah, just same old shit, different, same format, different criteria. No.
Okay, go on.
Well,
So what is it? To fly or not to fly, was it?
Yeah, I couldn't think of a better title.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to know what to say. I want to know my catchphrases. I love a good quiz.
Your one-off catchphrases, which I think are just things you say. Kangaroo.
Not to fly.
No, it was allowed to fly. Apparently, it helped its owner with anxiety and probably caused quite a lot of anxiety in the people around it.
That's it. That's. I mean, if you've seen kangaroos, they're like
ripped
7
dudes.
foot tall. Yeah, like
they're like the dude bros of the marsupial world.
Exactly. They can literally kill a man with a kick. Like, nobody's anxiety is being lessened because it's sat in an enclosed space with them.
It's breathing heavily and staring at you, and it just takes your complimentary drink, crushes it in its massive hand.
Yeah, it beats you in the face. There's nothing relaxing about
kangaroos are allowed to fly, but in 2015 a woman in Wisconsin was banned from McDonald's for bringing a kangaroo with her, and it's like, surely it shouldn't be allowed on a plane then.
No, I would agree. I'd say both of them are not places for kangaroos.
Aye, so no points there. An emotional support worm.
Not to fly.
Correct, because honestly, who gives a shit? It's not that they're not allowed, it's that no one's tried. Emotional support emu.
Ooh, another Australian then. No, I'm going to say not to fly.
Correct. No one, as far as my research turned up, no one has tried to bring an emu on board because they're, again, quite aggressive.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're another aggressive Australian species because they once beat the Australian army in a war.
Yeah.
And that's not a made-up fact.
Yeah. An emotional support pony.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
allowed to fly.
Yeah, correct. Like the most famous example was a pony called Flirty, and it was an emotional support pony, and they had to buy it another, its own seat, which is fair enough because it's a fucking horse.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of these things seem. I'm very obviously. I'm pretty sure we spoke about it before. We're all for mental health support, but some of these do seem to just be taking the piss. Like, I've got an animal and I want it to fly. How can I get it to fly? I'll say I need it. Like,
Yeah, like
dogs and stuff that have been trained to, like, you know, because obviously dogs are like an emotional, like social species.
yeah,
And, you know, we've trained them for thousands of years to sort of respond. And you can see how they are, like, going to help people. Like, what's up? Like, horses, like, unless you sat on them, don't even do what you tell them to. Like,
and even when you do sit on them, they've still got opinions of their own.
yeah. Like, I don't know. Right.
An emotional support monkey.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, of course it is. Apparently it helps its owner with agoraphobia. Animals like designed for different things. It's like anxiety is like a broad spectrum, so any animal will do. Specifically with agoraphobia, do you need a monkey? If you've got a nut allergy, do you go with a carp? You know, like what animal? How do you decide what animal helps with that? Did he go through a range of other pets going, it's not touching the sides on this? He found the monkey.
No. And that was it. Golden.
Yeah. An emotional support fly.
No.
Yeah, maybe by accident it flew on, but no one's bothered to. A baby elephant.
No.
Correct.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
Really?
I should have let you...
Yeah. No. I'm sticking with my final answer now. But,
Are you sure? And I've told you the answer, you can't go back.
It's just because you specifically said baby. And then I was like, oh, he's been very specific there. Maybe he's referring to an actual case.
What, a full-grown African elephant?
No.
Turtle.
Yes, why not?
Well, there's a number of reasons, but correct. Someone took I mean, it was only a small turtle, but I much prefer it for one of those giant Galapagos ones.
Just Galapagos ones.
just sort of cramming it into the overhead locker. The Sphinx, the emotional support Sphinx.
Again, I'm going to say no.
Correct, it's mythical. And finally...
And speaks in riddles, so it's anxiety inducing at the best of times.
Hi, are you having the chicken or the fish? That's not a riddle, it's a menu. I tried to think of a riddle then. I couldn't. And finally, the emotional support pigeon.
Yes.
Correct. Someone
Wow.
did take an emotional support pigeon on a flight with them, and then when they opened the doors on the other end, it immediately flew out and buggered off.
It probably flew home.
Yeah, probably. It's probably anxious about flying, like, fuck, we'll get home.
Wow.
So, I don't know what we've learned, apart from don't take your rabbit on boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know.
You know, in these trying times is what we need to know. So that's the end of my first topic. Now, Chris, what's your first one?
Okay, so once again, I've outsourced the topics to one of our listeners. And again, I encourage you all to send in your weird facts if you want them to be shared, because it makes my job easier, specifically because I'm the one who checks the emails and social media feeds.
Yeah, it's fine for you. I'm scrubbing around in the dirt of history books looking for this shit, and you're just being sent them fully formed.
Exactly. So this one comes from Henry, who is one of our friends over at the Firestarters podcast.
Hello, Henry.
So go check them out as well. Well, the chairman of Samsung is probably dead, but everyone's pretending that he's still alive. With good...
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
Yeah, okay. So, here's the thing. So, obviously, Samsung, we all know, as, well, you know, sort of the only rival to Apple, really, when it comes to phones and, you know, makers of TVs, etc. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how we know them over here. But back in their native Korea, they are a huge conglomerate of... They basically do everything. They're like one of those, what do you call it? You know, like in sci-fi films where there's, you know, like Omnicore, and, you know, they make everything from like...
Yeah, Globotech.
Yeah, exactly. You know, yeah, like this is ridiculous. How can one company make everything from like tanks to toasters? Like, no company. Yeah, Samsung is that company.
So it's like a Korean Acme.
Yeah, exactly. So they're essentially responsible for 12% of the GDP of South Korea, all on their own, just because they're in everything from like shipbuilding, which I think, if I recall correctly, is actually how they started. They started as a shipbuilding company and then pivoted into home electronics, as you do. Yeah, they're everything. Construction companies, finance. Yeah, literally pretty much anything you can think of, they've probably got like an interest in it.
Yeah.
And they're also like, obviously with them being like, globally known electronics thing, they also a huge amount of Korea's exports as well. 20% of thereabouts. So essentially hugely important. And that also means as well, like they have like, that's just them, like alone. And then from there, obviously, with such a big company, there's like an entire cottage industry of companies, that can only exist because of Samsung, supplying parts or
like the
whatever.
Sort of little fish that follow like basking sharks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They're the remoras of the
so
Samsung's great white
packaging companies and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So their impact is even bigger than what it sounds like. So essentially, it is the Korean economy in many ways. Also, though, Korea apparently has quite strict inheritance tax, 50% on assets over $2.5 million, which Samsung most definitely is, and it's one of those ones where it's still owned by, it's not like a PLC, I don't think. I think it's still owned by the one family.
Yeah, Keith Samsung.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
probably not Keith.
No, indeed. Or neither Samsung. Chairman Lee Gun-hee, if I butchered his surname. Oh, first name actually, isn't it? Korean. Lee will be the family name. He's the chairman. And in 2014, he had a heart attack and went to hospital, as you'd expect.
And should do.
Indeed. Only, as we just discussed, how Samsung has their hands in everything. That includes private hospitals.
Oh, right, okay.
So he went into a private Samsung clinic, and he's never been seen again.
Oh.
So, and what the theory is...
For tax reasons.
Well, yeah, so that's the theory. If he's dead, he passes it down to his children, but they'd owe $7 billion. They'd owe 50% of its value and would have to sell that probably to pay the government the amount because, it's like based on the value of the asset and all that. They'd have to sell their stakes in it. They've just pretended he's still alive. He's not been seen in 6 years now.
Do you know how old the kids are?
Well into their adult life, like 50 or whatever.
So I was going to say, because, it's bad enough, when you're a little kid and, you I don't know, maybe you get on the bus and, your mum's pretending like you're younger so you get a cheaper ticket. And, keeping that secret, it's all, that seems like the whole world. If you're a little kid and say, right, okay, you've got to go along with this because there's $3.5 billion riding on it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of pressure. But no, they're adults and they're almost certainly in on it.
Right, okay. And how sure are we that this isn't a sort of Korean remake of Weekend at Bernie's?
We are 0% certain of that.
Okay.
It could well be. Apparently people who've claimed he was dead have been arrested for completely unrelated reasons and withdrawn their story. Stuff like that. As sort of all massive conglomerates and billionaires and whatnot, they have contacts and stakes in the media as well. So, everyone's a bit like, oh, are they telling the truth? It'd be like if there was a story about Fox News, you wouldn't exactly be sure the Sun was telling the truth because it's all Murdoch owned and whatnot, isn't it? So
yeah.
It's just
so it's got all the key ingredients for a great conspiracy theory.
Indeed. So, it's a man who was in ill health, just hasn't been seen for 6 years. They wheeled him in, and they've never seen him wheeled out. But yeah,
but maybe that the sort of spin on it is it's we own the hospital. We just made an underground tunnel, a Samsung tunnel, we didn't need to come out.
Straight to his house.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I know we have like big companies here, but it's weird though, isn't it? Because like Apple is objectively bigger, or whatever. I say here, that's obviously American. But like Apple's say objectively bigger, but like it isn't America, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
There's
probably not been anything like that. Well, in Britain, probably since like the East India Company or something.
Yeah. Or like,
obviously, we do have massive companies, BP or something, I guess. But
they're not like sort of inherent to like the sort of identity of our national economy.
Yeah. No. So anyway, there we go. Korean Weekend at Bennett. So the sequel. What is he called? Bong Joon? The guy who did Parasite.
Bong Joon-ho, is it?
Yes, that's it. His like follow up will be Parasite / Weekend at Bernie's. It's like I'm taking what worked in Parasite, the whole thing about like Korean economic disparity, and combining it with Weekend at Bernie's. Boom, all the money.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as an auteur, sort of, he might. Like, there's going to be... Can you imagine how much, like, product placement there'll be for Samsung? I don't know if he's going to be comfortable with that.
No, that is true. That is definitely
But still,
true.
One to look out for, film fans.
You heard it here first.
And last.
Okay, so with that out of the way, Chris, what's your next topic?
Okay, so for my second topic, we've spoken before about sort of isolated history, how we tend to learn about eras as sort of a standalone subject. So while we learn, I don't know, about like the English Civil War in history class at school, it's hard to know sort of what else was happening in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So on previous episodes, we learned that Star Wars came out when the guillotine was still used for executions.
Mm-hmm.
Or the same year that George Foreman invented his signature toasty maker. A town in Hungary elected a goose as mayor, I think. Or maybe we cut that one out.
I will take your word for it.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Anything goes these days. It's fine. But this week, my topic is about putting history in perspective, specifically ancient Egypt. Now, I saw a post on Tumblr by a user called Some Cunt Took My URL, which isn't the most family-friendly name, but I wanted to give accurate credit, that redrew ancient Egypt's timeline as though it started in 1 AD, because that's sort of an easier timeline to get your head around, if that makes sense.
Oh, so they sort of shifted
everything
the
forward.
Founding, so the first ever Egyptian thing, whatever, would have been year 1.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that's easier to get your head around.
Yeah, than just
like,
vaguely say 3,000 years ago or 4,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, it's interesting to compare it to like what like happened in the normal timeline elsewhere.
Normal timeline.
Yeah, because the main sort of history cinematic universe.
Okay,
this is the alt universe. So this topic is really about just how fucking long ancient Egypt was a thing.
Okay, go on, hit me.
Okay, so 1 AD, that's where we're starting.
Mm-hmm.
First 1,000 years is pre-dynastic Egypt. You've got to go 1,000 years before you even get to the first pharaohs.
Okay.
Okay, so year 1,000, first pharaoh comes to power.
Okay.
1,300, they start doing the little pyramids, the step pyramids.
Okay, yeah.
So, like, already we're in the year 1,300, and obviously that's like Black Plague in Europe.
Okay,
and that feels like within reach of, like, history, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, we have a fair grasp of what was happening then. Like, people were writing stuff down and, yeah.
Yeah. 1450, the Great Pyramid at Giza is built.
Okay. So we're talking, like, the Italian Renaissance now, aren't we? Like...
Yeah.
Yep.
1815, Pepe II died, and Civil War breaks out. So, 1815 is essentially modern history,
Yep, Napoleon's around, all that.
Yeah, eyeing up those rabbits. We'll jump to 1950, within, like, I don't know, a grandparent's lifetime. Mm-hmm. Egypt unifies into one state again. We've barely begun, and we're pretty much at the current year, and we've covered, in the normal timeline, the vast majority of European history.
Yeah.
That continues until what the equivalent of 2350, way in the future now, the era known as the Middle Kingdom ends. The New Kingdom begins in 2450. Why did it take 100 years to rename the kingdom?
Is that rhetorical?
No, answer me.
I don't know.
No. Well, that's why I didn't hire an Egyptologist. We shall speculate wildly. In 2520, Hatshepsut takes to the throne, who is credited as the longest reigning female pharaoh, and known as history's first great woman, in the equivalent of 2520.
Yeah, I know stuff about Hatshepsut. So the reason why she's a pharaoh rather than a queen, because obviously they had wives, and like the pharaohs would have had a wife, and she could have been called a queen and stuff like that. But she apparently wanted, well, she was like, I am not a queen, I am a pharaoh. Like, don't give me like that title, give me the proper title. And I think she was always depicted sort of like a male, if you know what I mean. Like, I think she wore like they had like the beard tied to, like in paintings and stuff.
Yeah.
Like she was always depicted that way.
Yeah, because wasn't it that because queens were essentially like royal but mortal, and pharaohs were like part god.
Yeah, something like that.
And
they were usually brothers and sisters, and it was weird. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and she claimed to be, is it Atum's wife?
I don't know.
I think so. Anyway, so now by 2650, Pharaoh Akhenaten unifies the country into a new monotheistic religion.
Oh, is he the one? I feel like I should know this, because I'm pretty sure I talked about it in an episode. Who decided that everyone should worship his new sun god, and then built
and he built a new city around it.
Nowhere. And then he died, and everyone just quietly went back to where they used to live because they're like, this is stupid.
Yeah, who was trying to do that? Was it
Saudi Arabia? One in the desert
so it's an idea as old as history itself.
Yeah.
We jump to 2680 and Tutankhamun dies. Probably the most famous pharaoh, or one of them anyway.
Which is mad because he was essentially one of the most inconsequential pharaohs. He just became massively famous because his tomb was hidden. Yeah. Nobody was able to rob his tomb until like 1920. So he became really famous.
When a white person did it.
Yeah. But yeah, essentially, like, he, I think he only reigned for a couple of years, and he was a teenager still, and very little, I think very little happened.
Yeah. Right, so now we're in 2720, and Ramesses II takes the throne.
The other super famous one.
Well, I'd say arguably, sort of historically, one of the most significant ones. Because in 2740, the world's first ever peace treaty is signed. The Treaty of Kadesh between Ramesses II and Hattusili III of the Hittites. Hittites is the first time it was literally set in stone. Like, guys, no more war. We've got a rock to prove it.
He also had like 90-something children, apparently.
We will get to this, because in 2790s, as you say, Ramesses II dies, leaving way too many kids to squabble over the succession, because then they spend a couple of centuries squabbling, and obviously their descendants squabbling, because in 2920, or the equivalent thereof, civil war breaks out again, breaking in Egypt into two states, once more.
Yeah.
We have to wait till 3050 for the country to briefly reunite into a single state again.
So we've started in year one, and we're now past busted classic pop anthem year 3000 when everybody lives underwater.
Underwater. Yeah.
Okay. Context.
Yep. I think we should mark all things by
busted songs.
Yep. Can you name a single other one?
Oh yeah. None that are useful in terms of marking time. Air hostess.
Okay. Who is we now know a sphinx. Okay, so we jump way past Busted's and anthemic demarcation to 3180. There's another civil war, classic, that doesn't end till 3250 when the Nubian kings take over from the pharaohs.
Oh.
Jump to 3335 when it's conquered by Assyria.
Okay, so they've been conquered by two different people now at this point, so things aren't going well.
Yeah, but it's still, I think, one contiguous state, like nation state, I think.
Yeah, just same state, new bosses.
Yeah, well, like Britain for so many centuries. Like, we're Norman now. No. We're Viking now. We're Roman now. Yes. We'll jump to 3665 when Alexander the Great conquers Egypt. And so, again, changes hands until 3930, Cleopatra's born. And then in 3970, Cleopatra dies and Egypt falls to Rome, which essentially marks the end of ancient Egypt and I guess becomes modern Egypt. But 4,000 years, I don't like. That was the only. What was really interesting about reading this post is that reading it like that, realizing that we're still like 2,000 years off the end of ancient Egypt, was a really good way of putting it into context of how long 4,000 years is, because it doesn't feel that long when it's.
When you just say 4,000 years ago, especially like the further away things go, they like. You know how, like, we mark the 20th century by decade?
Yeah.
The 50s, the 60s, the 80s, all that. And then you get back a bit further and you're like, the Victorians, for basically most of the 19th century. And then, you start, and it gets, like, longer and longer, like the Middle Ages get you a couple hundred years. And then Roman Empire gets you, like, 600 odd years, And then the further back you just go, ancient Egypt, what was that? 4,000 odd years? Like,
yeah. Because, nothing is, like, synonymous with, like, the decade of, like, 370 to 380. I was like, classic.
Classic, yeah.
380.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's mad when you say it like that.
Yeah.
I do wonder, like, how much, when you refer to things as... So just say, obviously that was Egypt, and in a lot of ways it was, like you say, a nation state of some sort, like a shared culture. Or like a cultural entity, I suppose that's the easiest. Like one defined cultural entity. And I do wonder how, like, how much awareness of it being one thing did people have at any particular time. So, like, for example, we talk about Britain, or specifically England. We always use 1066 as sort of like demarcation of, like, that's sort of where English history not begins, because we are obviously before then. It's weird. We sort of mark it at the end of England as its own thing and start counting from there. But, England as a concept only very briefly.
As a not a series of tribes, but a unified nation.
Exactly. Like, we don't really count. We a little bit count, like, the kingdoms before then, like Wessex and Northumberland and all that.
Yeah.
Like, a little bit, but we only really properly start doing a history of the English as one lump of people from there. We never sort of harken back to Rome as sort of like they were us. We see the Romans as this distinct entity.
Yeah.
And then, like, I do wonder, like, obviously China, on the other hand, seems to have quite, like, they were obviously different kingdoms and stuff, but it seems to have been one entity for a long time in a way that, say, the Roman Empire doesn't. There was Rome for a long time, and then it split, and now very few, apart from the Italians themselves, harken back to Rome as being their, like, forebearers. So, I just wonder, like, I wonder how people in the time perceived it as. Cleopatra obviously deliberately harkened back to the ancient pharaohs because she wasn't related to them genetically at all.
Yeah, just like the vibe.
Yeah, and so, I just wonder, like...
Yeah, I think, it's definitely an interesting point, like, because whether you'd see yourself as...
Like, a continuation of...
Yeah, like you said, well, China's easy to imagine because the first dynasty was the dynasty that unified the country, And, you can see that as the sort of unifying time when China, geographically at least, China became China. But you're right, whether does someone say see themselves as a continuous line for the people ruled by the pharaohs. Yeah, it's an interesting point.
It is mad though, like you say, 4,000 years of sort of near unbroken cultural entity or whatever. It's mad.
Yeah.
And then you think of like Britain, say, well, it wasn't until 1706 or whatever it was, when it was England and Scotland still.
It also makes you like realise just how young the United States is.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. Like a couple hundred years
like
to go from...
in the time that they've been there, like Egypt would have like been shifting from one stage to another, let alone founding a new country.
Yeah, going from zero to like sole superpower in basically the time the Egyptians went from slightly longer than it took the Egyptians to rename their kingdom from middle to
late. Yeah.
I mean, I assume they didn't rename it. I assume nobody refers to themselves as the Middle Lord. Pretty sure someone's coming next.
Yeah, in the same way that in World War One they probably didn't call it World War One. That's so pessimistic. Let's call it the Great War. No. I reckon we're gonna have another one of these. I'm calling it branding now. World War One.
It's like that meme, it's like time traveller arrives back. It's like, what year is it? 1915. Oh, we're in the First World War. The first what?
So what World War? Yeah, maybe like if we get a time traveller this year, and they're like, "What year is it? 2020?" Like we'll call it AD, and they'll be like, "You mean like 1 BC?" Like what?
Before who?
What? Before Corona? Oh fuck! Oh, this is the last year before the calamity. The what now? Fucking hell! And on that cheery note, I think I will hand it over to you for your final and hopefully uplifting topic.
Okay, so for my final topic, it's somewhat relevant because you know how obviously nowadays with this whole coronavirus quarantine, there's a lot of people working from home. How do you think you would feel if your boss knew exactly how much time you spent working and how much you spent, not?
I think if the results are good, then it's down to the person. Like me personally, I'd feel slightly, it'd be a bit too sort of Orwellian if they could like give me like an efficiency rating.
Yeah, and that is exactly sort of the pushback that Barclays Bank got recently. There's a program called Sapiens, which whoever invented it basically should fuck right off. In the corporate buzzword, they want to create unprecedented transparency within companies. What it actually means is we want bosses to be able to spy on the employees and micromanage them to the nth degree.
Yeah.
It's a system that tracked the time employees spent at their desks and sent automated warnings to those spending too long on their breaks.
Ugh.
People obviously push back on it, using essentially the same terms you did, Orwellian and Big Brother and stuff. Yeah, and so Barclays had to pull it.
Was this recently, I take it?
Yeah, so this was in February of this year.
Oh, right. This year, right, okay,
yep,
yeah.
Just before everyone went home. Obviously, because they were saying it's intrusive and so it was getting criticism just also on sort of privacy reasons as well. But it's ridiculous because, as well as it being overbearing and stuff, I've got like you said, like, jobs really should be about results. Like, personally, I work best. I take a lot of breaks and stuff. And
40 brews a day.
Yes, exactly. And the thing is, I work from home a lot and stuff, and it really suits me because it means I can work a bit, take a break, work a bit. Whereas I'm in the office, you sort of sat there and you spend a lot of time looking busy. And the thing is, not to sound too up my own backside, but not a single issue ever with sort of my productivity and getting work done. All my feedback is always positive about the amount of work and everything I get done, because I'm not wasting time looking busy. All this tool does is make people sit at their desks pretending to work whilst their brain, because if you don't recharge your brain, you don't get anything done.
So I'm guessing it's a lot of pointless emails and...
Yeah, well, you'd just be sat there at your desk typing slowly rather than actually thinking, right, I need to get this done. And I also feel like stuff like that is also like a disincentive to... You remember at school, like if you finished your work early, all that happened was your teacher gave you more work to do.
Yeah.
So like you learn quickly to be like, milk it.
Yeah.
I'd get, if I was doing like a 10 question thing, I'd do 9 questions, and then I'd leave the last question, and then like, because if I did it straight away, you just know that the teacher's just going to be like, all right, well done, here's another 10 questions.
Yeah.
It's like no incentive to finish, and it just does the same thing, sort of. It's like the same idea.
Into account as well that, like, for so many of us, we take work home with us, so it's like we're working on the commute, or you're expected to reply to emails sent at midnight because some knobhead's still working at midnight. And it's like, and you know, we've all got these great phones in our pockets, but the downside is we're super connected all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy to not have a good work-life balance that you can shut the door.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with this whole, like, I find with my colleagues, there's a lot of people, you know, I say we're all sort of in enforced working from home. Like, say, we're all fortunate that we can work from home. We're all laptop and we've all got laptops and we can all work from home. So, like, it's fortunate. Some of my colleagues are really struggling with it because they've not got the routine and they've not got the sort of delineation between home and work, and they're actually struggling with that.
Yeah.
They're trying to make their own routines now just to try and keep in some sort of rhythm.
Do you think they like get dressed for work? Like, will there be some people putting on a suit and tie to sit at the desk?
People do that, but they do say, like, I also find, like, sometimes it is best to get dressed just to say, like, right, I'm up. Like, not dressed in suit and tie and stuff, but, you know, like,
just
something
the tie,
more than a dressing
gown.
that's my weekend attire. But you know, like something more than just pajamas or a dressing gown or something. Like,
just helps set the right frame of mind, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, sometimes it is also like useful to, especially when you know you've got like, sometimes it's useful to be able to roll over in bed. You know, not to usual time. Check whether or not you've got anything to do. You can ease yourself into work as well on the other side.
Yeah.
I find it suits me a lot. Some people need like rigid like routines and stuff. But I think either way, the best companies and the best things will always work best when sort of you're allowed to find the way that works for you rather than being told.
Yeah, rather than... Yeah, soon as it's prescriptive and you've got to hit like sort of work quotas in terms of hours. Or in terms of, you know, sort of tasks completed per hour, then you're just cramming people through a tube, and that's obviously not going to work.
Also, it turns out that this isn't the first time Barclays have done something like this.
Oh, right.
They once installed black boxes under people's desks to track how long they were spending at work.
Yeah, that seems totally legal and legitimate.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just don't understand as well, like, I don't know, there's a bunch of people who must just assume humans are like robots. This is partly one of the reasons why I did terribly as a waiter and sort of, well, I lasted 8 days as a waiter one summer and I was like, I've had enough. Because it was just this sort of like, you know, like the churn of just, you get one thing done, and then you have to do another, and you have to do another, you know, there's never like until the end of your hours, there's no like defined goal.
Yeah, it's as much as possible of one thing.
Yeah, whereas when I've got like, this is your list of things to do, and if you don't get it done, you'll stay there all night, and if you do get it done, like, you're done. Like, I work a lot better.
Yeah, if you find creative ways to accomplish them, rather than like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know, sense of achievement in it. But either way, I just don't know. I don't know what. I'd hate as well, as a manager, I'd hate to be like, you know, snooping on everything and be like, oh, well, Carol's only been at her desk for 57 minutes out of every hour. Ho, 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 she's getting a letter. Although this does hark back to an episode we did about the Japanese man who took 3 minutes early to lunch and was forced to apologise on there. Was it?
Yeah.
Forced to resign in shame because it was taking slightly longer at lunch so they could get to the front of the queue.
And I think that's more cultural, but like, there's definitely a case of who can be seen to be doing the most work.
Yeah, not necessarily the best, just the most.
Yeah.
Who sends the email latest?
Yeah, and now you can schedule emails, so it's hard to tell because just set that for 2 a.m. Pretend you have no life.
I just learned a story about that. Someone from my company a few years ago, but I just told this story the other day. He thought he was about to be fired, so he scheduled an email to be sent out because he was given the manager scheduled a meeting, but sort of no subject in it, and this guy was convinced he was about to be fired, so he decided to send out a scheduled email, basically telling everyone what he thought of it.
Oh, God.
And then it turns out the meeting wasn't to fire him, it was about something else, and his email went out.
Oh, my God.
And then he got fired for the email. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
I mean, you've got to be so sure that you're getting fired. I mean, I sort of am cringing at that. I don't like that at all.
Yeah. What an idiot. Okay, so thank you for tuning in your emergency radio to listen to this quarantined episode of Cooking with Grief. Obviously, real talk for a second. We know quite a lot of people are stressed out right now, so hopefully we brought you some light entertainment before the end of the world. Because if society does collapse, this is all we have to add to you need us. What skills do you have? We have much knowledge, like in-depth knowledge or just like a cursory knowledge of random facts. The latter. Get out.
Well, 160 times over the course of this podcast, we have read a headline and dabbled around scrolling down,
Yeah, what more would you want? Look after yourselves, and we'll be looking after ourselves as well, just in case you were worried. You probably weren't. So yeah, and whilst we've got your attention, please subscribe to us on Twitter, keep in touch with us that way, email us at cookingwithgrief@gmail.com. The Twitter is cookingwithgrief, because there's no G on cooking because there wasn't enough characters. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks with more weird facts. So it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me as well.
Alright, ciao.
Aye, stay safe, look after one another.
Be excellent to one another.
Yeah, obnoxiously nice.
Yes, be too nice.
Yeah,
be Canadian in all your
nice.
dealings.
Yeah.
And be nice to your retail staff, because as 50% of this podcast understands, it's a bit of a nightmare out there at the moment.
Yeah, in between pressing record, we've had some absolute horror anecdotes from me.
Yeah, so be nice, especially to retail workers. Well, just everyone. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah, I swear we've been telling people to not be dicks for years, and finally, the prophets that we are, it's finally come true.
Exactly. Bye.
Bye. We love you.
Welcome everybody to the Pot Askew podcast. I am...
Whoa, dude. This is our promo, not the show. I'm Rico.
Oops, my bad. I'm CJ. We're the hosts of the Pot Askew podcast.
We are fans of pretty much anything and everything pop culture, including movies, TV shows, books, video games, comics, music, and of course, Kevin Smith. Now, while we do keep our fingers on the pulse of Silent Bob, he certainly doesn't need our help in promoting him.
You got that right. We do our own thing, with inspiration from the man and his mantra of why not. We've got stories from celebrities we've interviewed, theories of our own for certain movies, and we usually have a great debate on almost anything.
We also do commentaries on movies. Sometimes we ask our fans what they want to watch with us. So, if you love the timbre of our vocal cords and you want to watch a movie at the same time, give us a listen.
Stay tuned every Monday. There's always something new. And if you've been good this year, we may even give you some bonus episodes from time to time.
So be good, subscribe, and enjoy Pot Askew, proud members of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network.